It's time to find the greatest common factor. We might be asked to find the prime factorization of 32 and 36, and in order to do so, we would find the factor trees for 32 and 36. I've started this factor tree, and remember, for a factor tree, you really have to make sure that the lowest level is made up of all prime numbers. So 4 can still be broken down into 2 times 2. So as you see, that prime factorization of 32 is 2 to the 5th power. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so our base is 2, and our exponent is 5. For 36, I'll go ahead and find that factor tree. Let's work on that factor tree. I've started that factor tree with a 3 times 12, bring down the 3. This is 3 times 4, and 4, as before, is not prime, so it breaks down into 2 times 2, and then these other numbers, they come straight down. Now I reorder that, and when I reorder it, I put the smallest one first. I've got two 2's, so that's 2 times 2, 2 squared, times 3, and there's also 2 3's here, and that's why it's 3 squared. Now the greatest common factor, what we're going to do is we're going to take a look at both of those prime factorizations, 2 to the 5th, 2 squared times 3 squared, and what we do, it's going to be the product of the common prime factors. So what do these have in common? What do these have in common? And I'm going to circle in yellow what it is that they have in common. Hey, there's a 2 here. There's also a 2 here. There's a 2 here, and there's another 2 here. So the greatest common factor, the GCF, of 32 and 36 is that product of their common factors, which is 2 times 2, which is 4. The greatest common factor of 32 and 36 is 4. All right, so this is the method again for finding the greatest common factor. So we could be looking at the greatest common factor of, let's say, 24 and 30, of 24 and 30. And so what we do again, step 1 says to make factor trees for both numbers. So that there is that prime factorization of 24, after we draw that factor tree, and that there is a factor tree for 30. The prime factorization of 30 would be 2 times 3 times 5. Remember, we put that back in order. Whereas the prime factorization for 24 would be 2 cubed times 3. Step 2 says to identify all the common prime factors. So 3 is common with 3, 2 is common with 2, and step 3 states that the greatest common factor, or the GCF, is going to be the product, which is a multiplication problem, of the common prime factors. So 3 and 2 are common, so we multiply 3 times 2, which equals 6, to find that greatest common factor. Your turn to try. What is the greatest common factor of 10 and 15? What's the greatest common factor? Ideally, you answered 5. Here's another one. Here's another one for you to try. 12 and 42. If you want to pause the video and work on another factor tree, you may. Otherwise, I'm going to go ahead and show you those factor trees in just a second. And I do want you to write this number sentence down here where it says blank is the GCF of 12 and 42. So do write out this here and pause. There are the factor trees for 12 and 42. What was that next step again? And then what did we do? Put down your answer. Ideally, you came up with 6. the product of 2 and 3, which was those common factors for 12 and 42. So the GCF is 2 times 3, which does equal 6. I'm going to set up factor trees again for 20 and 25. You go ahead and try. This is a you try problem. Hit pause. Again, that was 20, 25. Here are your factor trees. There are the factor trees. Think about what you're going to do. And write your solution right there on that line. The only one that they have in common is 5. And so we put a 5 there. The GCF, or greatest common factor, is 5 for 20 and 25. Here's way 2 to find that greatest common factor, or the GCF. You can make a list. And then so for step 1, you list all the factors of each number. Step 2, you identify the common factors. And then step 3, you compare to find the greatest common factor. And then so let's go ahead and use two numbers here. If we use two numbers like 20 and 30, we can find the GCF, or greatest common factor, of 20 and 30 using this method and using this way. It says to list all the factors of each number. We'll start with 20, where we know the factors are 1, 2, 4, 5, 10, and 20. Our factors of 30, I'll go ahead and list them for you. There are factors of 30, and then in step 2, we're identifying the common factors. So what factors do these have in common? Well, 1's common, 2 is common. See a 3 here, but I don't see a 3 here. And then I also see a 5 that is common. There's just a 10 and 20 here. Oh, there is two 10s still. So we'll go ahead and circle those two 10s. And none of those other ones are common. So the GCF, or greatest common factor, of 20 and 30 is, in step 3, we're comparing these. Well, the 10's the biggest, so the greatest common factor of 20 and 30 is 10. Makes sense. 10 times 2 is 20. 10 times 3 is 30. It is a common factor, and it's not only just a common factor of those two numbers, it is the greatest common factor. All right, it's your turn to try. We're going to go ahead and find the greatest common factor for 24 and 42. I'm going to go ahead and start for you. 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, 14, 21, and 42 are your factors of 42. For your factors of 24, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, and you find those corresponding factors. Go ahead and hit pause, find the corresponding factors for 2, and for 3, and then also for 1. Hopefully you hit pause. And then ideally you were able to come up with those other factors. Those other factors of 24 being 8, corresponding with 3, 12 going with 2, and of course 24 going with 1. Now the next step, maybe you went through and finished it and just said the GCF of 24 and 42 is. The next step was to find those common factors. 1, 1, 2, 2, 3, 3, 6, 6. And that looks like it's it. 8, nope. 12, nope. 24, nope. They're not uncommon. So the greatest common factor is 6. Again, there's always more than one way. And then so we have 24 and 42. Remember, those common ones are 2 times 3. And in this case, when we're using that factor tree, we just go ahead and multiply 2 times 3 equaling 6 for our greatest common factor. And that's how you figure out this greatest common factor.